Welcome back to the Ignore the Tablet podcast. Jazz hands. Welcome back to the Ignore the Tablet podcast, the only FPL podcast on the entire internet, hosted by me. My name is Devin, and today we're doing a little bit of planning for Gameweek 23. But maybe planning is not the right word because we're doing so much more than that. So I'm changing the whole lingo. It's not planning. That sounds like what you do on just like a regular Sunday. No, we're strategizing because we're going to be going through all sorts of players. We're going to be going through fixture difficulty ratings and so much more. So if you like this kind of content, if you're into the kind of statsy stuff, which we will be doing a deep dive on, subscribe, like, I guess, whatever. You know what to do. I don't need to baby you, coddle you. So yeah, let's just jump straight into the episode. So first things first, we've got chapter markers back. So hopefully, hooray, we're good there. Back. So on YouTube and on the podcast apps, there should be chapter markers in your description. Jump to whatever section you feel fit, because there should be kind of maybe a lot of chapters this week. There's a lot to talk about. So, but yeah, without further ado, we've got all the fixtures. If you're on YouTube, you can see visually Gameweek 23 and who plays each other. And yeah, forewarning, I'm recording this Thursday night, so some of this injury information is not fully updated. We'll get better information tomorrow when the pressers come out and managers can properly inform the press and media about injuries, which they don't always do. So that's not reliable. This is not going to be 100% reliable either, but we have some indication of who is probable to play. I'll probably have my own opinions in there too. This is just off of RotoWire, so that's the source, and we're going to be going game by game. Okay, so the first match that we see up, and that is the early game on Saturday, 7:30 a.m. Eastern, is West Ham Sunderland. I think stats-wise, this is going to be tipped towards Sunderland just because West Ham had been terrible. However, West Ham have been slightly better, but the bar is so low on them. They've been kind of one of the most depressing teams, I think, in the entire league. You would expect Burnley to be awful. You would expect even the likes of Sunderland and Leeds, the new boys, to come up to be awful, but they've been really good. West Ham and Wolves have probably been the most depressing teams this season, but they've slightly done a little bit better recently. Wolves especially. West Ham obviously got a last-minute winner against Tottenham last week. So am I going to trust the overall stats that probably are tilted towards Sunderland? I think the vibes managers would say that West Ham at home probably have a higher probability of winning or getting some sort of result than they would have 4 or 5 weeks ago. But I still think this one is going to be a Sunderland win or a 0-0 draw. Sunderland are just so good defensively. So in terms of FPL, I'll be starting Mukiele almost certainly in my team. If I had Dan Ballard, I'd be starting him. If I had Robin Roofs, I'd be starting him. Would I be starting 2 Sunderland defenders if I had him? Yeah, probably. And would I be... Bowen is kind of an option, and now that Paqueta is kind of out of the picture, I can't remember if he got injured and or if he is being transferred away. I know heavy rumors that he'll be leaving in the winter transfer window, which is currently open. And they would have Jared Bowen as the penalty kick taker. So maybe that's a shout, but I would not be bringing in Jared Bowen for this fixture. And there's no other player on West Ham I would be bringing in. So from an FPL standpoint, yep, Sunderland defenders probably look pretty good for this fixture. From a prediction standpoint, I'm going to say 0-0 for this one. Next up, we've got Man City versus Wolves, and my last prediction last week for Manchester City was a train wreck. I said 3-0 to them, and they got absolutely spanked. It was 2-0 at the end of it for Manchester United, but it could have been so much more. They were awful. They just got spanked by Bodo Glimt. So they have to bounce back at some point. I think part of my reasoning is that I just know that Man City are better than this, even if they're playing like Kuzhinov, kind of more rotational defenders. They have a good squad. They have a great manager. They should be performing a lot better than this, but they have been poor recently. And on the flip side, Wolves have been much better. Still a championship looking squad. Would I be bringing in Mane or any of the Wolves players to play against Man City away? No, I would not. So no Wolves players would be even in consideration for FPL. For Man City, I think I'm going to be starting all three. Mark Gehi is in my team. I've got Phil Foden and Haaland. It looks like they're predicted to start according to RotoWire. Will they start? I'm not entirely sure. But I think this is on paper the most lopsided fixture this week. So to answer the question, who will I be captaining? It's almost certainly Haaland. And I don't know if anything would change that apart from maybe getting some leak news that he wouldn't start. Prediction for that one, I'm just going to keep it rolling and do 3-0 again. I think that is a probable scoreline, but based on their two most recent results, it would definitely not be. But if we're taking the wider scheme of things, they have to be better than this. So I'm going to predict 3-0 to Man City in that one. So let's move on to Fulham Brighton. So Fulham have been doing really well at home. They always do well at Craven Cottage. As far back as I can remember. Brighton have been I have to be honest, they have been a little underwhelming in most of the fixtures that I've watched with them. Minte, I'm a huge fan of, but apart from that, the attacking threat, not consistent. Defensively, they always look pretty vulnerable. I think this one, I'm going to give Fulham an easy 1-0 win. Now, from an FPL standpoint, I'm still not the biggest fan of Harry Wilson. I think he's massively overperformed. We can see that in his underlying data and what outcomes he's gotten so far this season. I love Harry Wilson as a player, not for FPL purposes, but at former Liverpool Academy. But I don't think I'd be bringing in Wolves assets for this in particular. If we're talking about like a very short-term fix, because I think Brighton have the potential to cause an upset on my 1-0 prediction here. But yeah, I think it generally on paper straightforward for Fulham just because they've done so well at home, but Brighton are just very unpredictable. So, but also at the same point, their highs are not particularly high and their lows are not particularly low. They're just Brighton are such a weird team this season. I know that Brighton's fixtures are generally pretty okay for the next 5-6 game weeks, but I don't know if this would be the time I would be bringing in someone like a Minte or a Van Hecke. Definitely not for Bruggen, even though he's done pretty well recently. He had a penalty save. But yeah, 1-0 to Fulham. I don't think I'd be bringing anybody in for FPL purposes on either side for a short-term fix. I'll try to speed this up because I'm probably already running late and we just started the episode. But Burnley versus Tottenham. FPL, we can completely wipe this one off the map because there's not a single player on Tottenham that I think has done very well from an FPL standpoint, apart from maybe Van de Ven, and he's been playing out of his socks from a underlying data perspective. And just looking at his past history, he's gotten so many more goals and assists this season than ever. Yeah, I don't think Conor Gallagher, their new signing, is going to make much of a difference here. Burnley are just still poor, but Tottenham are also in the mud. I think I saw a post on Reddit now that somebody got some crazy score maybe a month ago, and now every week without fail, there's someone doing like a completely random captaincy shout. I think I saw somebody put the captaincy on Dubravka, just kind of, I guess, as a joke because Tottenham have been so bad. But I guess they did okay in midweek against Dortmund. If this was earlier on in the season, I think I would have said somebody like Xavi Simons or Christian Romero, Van de Ven would be good options just because they pose so much. They look so threatening on corners and set pieces. They just haven't. I guess they actually have put a fair few away, especially Van de Ven, but Romero has not put as many away as I thought he would, just based on like, he's normally a pretty good goal threat from set pieces. But yeah, I don't think I'd be bringing any Tottenham players in for the immediate future, even though this is probably one of the best fixtures on the lot. So Burnley, would I be playing Dubravka over maybe if I had, like, let's say a David Raya playing against Manchester United? It's not the worst shout in the entire world, but apart from that, I don't think I would be playing any Burnley players, despite how bad Tottenham have been. Oh, and that one, I'll give a 1-1 draw. And I think that will be the nail in the coffin. I think if it's not a convincing win, I think Thomas Frank is counting his days. I think I saw a tweet or something saying that they were giving him Dortmund to turn it around, and I guess they obviously won. Dortmund had the red card early on. They just have not looked, they're not playing well. So if they were playing well and the results weren't going their way, it would be one thing. The underlying data and the overall eye test is just not convincing for Thomas Frank and Tottenham. So I think this is going to be the final match for Thomas Frank at Tottenham, and they'll move on to an interim. Okay, next up we've got Bournemouth versus Liverpool. Kind of a mixed set with Liverpool. Done very well in Europe. Haven't been able to translate that form over to the Premier League. Premier League set up a little bit differently, but I think Bournemouth are actually one of those teams that are going to come out and attack, which I think will benefit Liverpool. And Bournemouth have just been very poor defensively. The underlying data would suggest that they've been okay, but Petrovic has not been as good as he was last season in Ligue 1. And just overall, it takes a toll. We saw very early on that this makeshift defense that they were able to throw together with like basically an entire new back line and goalkeeper was relatively good. But over time, it's difficult. Iriola has a very challenging job with the players he has at his disposal. And when you sell so many defenders and players in general, now that Semenyo's gone and the injury crisis that they had, like, look, David Brooks out, Tyler Adams out, Kluivert out, Tavernier out. I guess they're saying Brooks is questionable. It's just, what are you supposed to do in those conditions? Your Bournemouth are not a massive team with massive revenues that are able to have massive squad depth on the scale of Liverpool, who have terrible squad depth, by the way. Awful planning, but so maybe that was a bad example, but pretty much any other large team, they're going to have pretty decent depth, and it's just tough for Bournemouth. So prediction wise, I think this one, Liverpool always are going to concede. I'm going to say 2-1 to Liverpool. That's my prediction. And if I'm being completely honest, did I just mumble then? If I'm being completely honest, Liverpool's fixtures don't look that great. I think they're going to have a tough time, and they have not been playing very well at Anfield. So, and they have quite a few home fixtures coming up, but they've been so bad at home. It's not even like a massive advantage for them at the moment. So in terms of FPL assets, we've got Salah back. That's a huge boon for them. Szoboszlai missed the penalty. I wouldn't be rushing to bring Salah back in. If I had a gun to my head, I would not be bringing him in. Van Dijk, any defender, I'd basically be out of the question. Cody Gakpo's data looks pretty good, but now it's like, how nailed is he going to be moving forward? It's a tough call. So I don't know if I'd be bringing in Liverpool assets. There's much better available elsewhere. Bournemouth, if Tavernier was fit, that would be something different, but they just are completely gutted. Basically, the only player I'd probably consider is Junior Krupi, maybe Senesi, but that's basically it. And not this week. Sorry, I cut that off too early. I would not be bringing players in for this week, obviously, because Liverpool, even at that, though they've been pretty bad. This is not a targetable fixture for them. So next week is probably when I would consider, if Tavernier's back fit, Junior Krupi, Senesi, etc. But this week, no. Okay, moving on. Newcastle, Aston Villa, two teams that I have a hard time differentiating, honestly, for a whole host of reasons. But this one's going to be tough to predict. So for that reason, basically, it's going to be very tough to predict. Newcastle at home, they've been very good at home. Villa away, they've been pretty poor away. They're saying Martinez is out. Is that true? If that's true, then yeah, I think it's going to be not convincing, but I think the scales have to shift towards Newcastle in terms of predicting that result. This one's tough. For what it's worth, I think this one's going to be low scoring. 1-0 to Newcastle. I'm just going to get it over with, even though I'm not very overly convinced about that result. And in terms of FPL, it kind of just stinks at the moment because I love Yohan Wissa. I love Voltamata, Voltamessi. I like a lot of their players, and I think they're good FPL assets, especially Malik Chia, but would I be bringing... I don't think I'd be bringing them in for this one. And then longer term, I don't think their fixtures are amazing. So, yeah, we'll take a look at that in a bit right after this segment, but yeah, I'm not loving Newcastle or Villa assets for the foreseeable future. I think a lot of that is tilted because we'll talk about the main team next, Chelsea. Chelsea and Arsenal and Manchester United assets, to be fair, are all looking very good from 24 onwards, but 23, no. And as we were just mentioning, Crystal Palace versus Chelsea is the next fixture we'll be discussing. Munoz coming back into contention. I think that's a huge boost for them. Ismail Assar coming back into contention, huge as well. They also got what's his name from Tottenham, the Welsh international, who I'm drawing a blank on, the guy who only gets far post tap-ins. Brennan Johnson. I totally didn't have to look that up, but does that put some pressure on? Now they really have 3, potentially 4 if you're counting Nketiah, but that he's never really been in the mix there. 3 players for those 2 positions. So it does kind of make Ismail Assar a little less ideal, and that was definitely a player I was targeting moving forward. I wouldn't be bringing him in this fixture, and I think it's going to be very valuable to wait 1 week, get a little bit more data on how they may set up. But yeah, Crystal Palace I like long-term, despite the fact that they've been pretty poor and all the news and all the players that they're losing and just the constant media nonsense around like Mateta's contract and obviously Gehi leaving and then Glasner leaving at the end of the season. It's not a good time to be a Palace fan, despite the fact they've just won the FA Cup last season. Yeah, it stinks, but short, quick answer, wouldn't be bringing in Crystal Palace assets this match, but I think waiting 1 week is going to be valuable for a lot of high value VAPM Crystal Palace assets. So I'm thinking Ismail Assar, I already have Lacroix, but Munoz, very interesting. And on the Chelsea side of things, we've got a few points of interest. Cole Palmer rumored to Manchester United. How are Chelsea even allowing that to enter the atmosphere? Crazy. I'm loving Enzo Fernandez. Maybe not this week. I think it's going to be tough playing at Crystal Palace. Chalobah is going to be a big option moving forward. I don't know if I'd be bringing him in this week in particular. It's probably not the worst week to bring him in, but if you were making a defensive transfer, I think Chalobah would be a pretty good pick this week. Other players that are going to be discussed, Pedro Neto. I don't hate that, actually. It's just a minutes thing. His minutes are going to be not as consistent as like a Enzo Fernandez. I don't even think the upside is that much bigger either. So, and then Cole Palmer, you just can't stay fit. So Chelsea are kind of a mess in the best way possible, but I'll be considering them heavily game week 24 onward. And if I had to make a defensive transfer, Chalobah probably would be the guy, actually. I just wrote down my prediction and I don't even believe it. I'm going to go with a 0-0 draw, but I feel like I'm thinking draw, but it could be like a no score draw, and it could also be like a 3-3 draw. So I'm obviously very torn on where to go with this one. I think the teams are pretty evenly matched, especially considering Palace are at home. 0-0 or 3-3. This one's going to be the rogue one. I think the rest are going to be straightforward. So let's go 3-3. Let's just spice it up. I think that's going to be the scoreline. It's going to be an absolutely stupid game. Next match up is Brentford versus Nottingham Forest, and I really like Brentford in this one. So I will definitely be starting Igor Thiago. Could have had a goal last week. Unfortunately blanked. I just realized Igor Thiago, Igor Jesus. Very confusing. I like Brentford for this. I'll restate that again. If I had any of their defensive assets, like if I had a Collins, I think Collins is very underrated, by the way. If I had a Kevin Shada, what's up with Ouattara Dango? Is he not in contention? RotoWire saying that he's not predicted to start. I don't know how convincing that is, but he is back from AFCON. It doesn't say he's like out. So I don't know what the deal is there with that one, but if I had Brentford players, I'd 100% be starting them in this one. Would I be bringing in Brentford players? I think Igor Thiago would be a good shout. I think Collins would also be a good shout. I need to look at their fixtures because I don't know long-term if they look good, but because they just had a pretty good stretch of fixtures. Nottingham Forest players, I'm just not getting anywhere near that. I liked they were under Nuno last season when their defensive line was pretty predictable in terms of how they were playing, how defensively solid they were, what players were in, what players were fit. But I just can't predict their like forward midfield line apart from like Anderson and Gibbs White. So yeah, I'm not touching Nottingham Forest with a 10-foot pole. I guess that's it. I don't have anything else to say. So let's move on to the next one. And it has to be the game of the week. Arsenal versus Manchester United. Manchester United looking very, very good. I know that Arsenal away is not an ideal fixture, but there's a solid chance I'm bringing in Bruno Fernandes this week. I think in retrospect, I should have brought him in last week and just like bit the bullet. I knew I was going to bring him in. He's an obvious upgrade over Cunha. I have the money to go from Cunha straight to Bruno. So it just makes sense, even though this is not an ideal fixture, especially from an attacking standpoint, from a defensive standpoint as well. It's just not, it's probably the worst fixture in the entire league at the moment. Prediction wise, let's jump into that. I think just overall, I think this one is going to be very tight. So last week when I said it was going to be 3-0 to Man City, I'm taking a different stance, not just because Manchester United did so well, but also I should have taken into consideration they're setting up where players are playing in their natural positions, and they're naturally going to play a little bit better than they have recently. Also, I think Arsenal have not been at their best. They haven't been getting out of like first or second gear lately. I said that last podcast, and I find that to be truer and truer. The fact that Bukayo Saka has not started the last 2 Premier League games is a little concerning as a Saka owner myself. But I think he, like RotoWire, I think he will start this one. I think it's too big of a match. You got to play him. So for that reason, I'm probably going to be sticking with Saka this week and putting that decision off 1 week. I have 2 transfers. If I make the 1 transfer from Cunha to Bruno this week, I will still have 2 transfers next week. So I'll still be able to deal with Saka then. But I think I'm pretty confident he's going to start. I'm pretty confident that Arsenal are going to win. So my prediction on the score would be 2-1. Did I give a Brentford Forest prediction? We'll go back to that in a second, but let's finish up with Arsenal, Manchester United. I think it's going to be a 2-1 win. I think it's going to be tight. I think I could honestly see like a last minute winner, and it would be huge for their title chances. The title, I think, is sewn up, but 2-1 to Arsenal, that would be my prediction. But I think it's going to be a nervy match, honestly. And I knew I was forgetting something with Brentford, Nottingham Forest. So I'm just going to say, I think it's going to be a 3-1 win to Brentford. And the last matchup of the week, we've got Everton versus Leeds. I'm loving my Everton boys at the moment. I've got Pickford. I've got Tarkowski. Although I take it back. I'm not loving Jack Grealish getting injured. I think he's out for like months, supposedly. So that is potentially a transfer out as well. So I forgot about that. I might need to handle that first. Okay, but apart from that, I'm loving the Everton assets. I feel sick to my stomach as a Liverpool fan, but this is a game and we're trying to win here. So Everton, well, sorry if I'm moving things around, but I'm loving their players. I think they've got great fixtures moving forward as well. So they look good for the foreseeable future. I think they're great for like Tarkowski's good for defensive contributions, good for clean sheets. He has goal threat as well. So I'm holding on to my Everton assets for dear life. And for Leeds, there's just not much to hold on to at the moment. I know a lot of people have been hot on Calvert-Lewin. I think he had his purple patch. I'm not sure how sustainable that will be moving forward, but for a cheap forward, I think it's fine. But for this one, there's probably a chance, depending on how your team is set up, I wouldn't even maybe be starting Calvert-Lewin in this one. Although, considering it's Everton, is it destiny that he scores against his old club? I don't know. But my prediction is going to be a 1-0 boring win for Everton. But how funny would it be if Calvert-Lewin scored against Everton? That would be great. Okay, so before we look at like fixture difficulty rating and diving into kind of what teams might be targetable moving forward, I want to just look at my team. We're diving in. We're going into the deep end, and this is what I have. It is not ideal because Jack Grealish is injured. But I think this would be Jack Grealish aside, this would be a pretty strong lineup, I think, moving into the weekend. If I sold Grealish, I'd have 7.9 in the bank. I don't know if that's an accurate bank total for me. I'd have to double check with my team, but 7.9 doesn't give me a whole lot of options. They have this feature on FPL.team to sort by expected points based on their model, not on mine. I don't condone this, but I'm just kind of curious who they suggest. Harvey Barnes against Villa? No. Cherky against Wolves? I mean, the fixture is good, but is he going to start? No. Gakpo against Bournemouth? No. Shada? Not against it. Not totally against it. But there's just, not a lot of options. I wish I could afford Grealish to Bruno, but that's not to be. I could go from Grealish to Rice because I only have 2 Arsenal players, and that's a player I could feel comfortable holding long term. And then maybe I would go Saka to Bruno because I at that point I can't afford Cunha to Bruno, right? Yeah, I'm minus 0.8 on that one. I don't know entirely what to do. I think what we'll do next, and heaven forbid I don't have Lord Pickford in goal. I think I need to look at the fixture difficulty rating, and then we'll dive into the stats, because this is concerning, I think. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what to do. Ideally, I would like to roll. If Grealish was fit playing Leeds, how amazing would that have been? Because let's just reset this. Is it going to go back to my team? Yeah. So if Grealish was fit, that's a pretty good lineup. I'm rolling right into 24 and having 3 free transfers so that I can manage Saka, Cunha, and maybe defender, like bringing in Chalobah potentially for like maybe one of Lacroix or Gehi. But yeah, this Grealish thing really sucks. I don't know what to do. Let's take a look at the fixture difficulty rating across the next 5-6 fixtures. Then we'll jump into the stats to see what the stats suggest on projected points based on my model, not this silly FPL.team model. Okay, here is kind of a visual. We can look at my projected or my like fixture difficulty ranking when I dive into my stats that I produce. But I think this is good to get a visual of like what teams are playing what over the next 5 or 6 game weeks, because it's pretty clear Chelsea have the best fixture difficulty rating, and that's reflected in my stats as well. And it's hard to get around it because you've got West Ham, Wolves, Leeds, Burnley, all in a row. You've got 3 home fixtures out of the 4 as well. So this 4 is probably like the best 4 fixtures you can have, because they're the 4 worst teams and most of them are home. And Wolves away is not difficult either. So yeah, Chelsea, it's hard to get around not having 1 or 2 of their assets. I'll have Enzo Fernandez, and potentially Chalobah, but I don't know. It's a good question. Who might be that third if I even bring in a third or a second? And I'm curious to see, like, once we go into the air table or pull up the stats that I produce, I'm curious to see how similar it is, because I think on paper I tend to agree with Fantasy Football Hub apparently, because it's looking pretty good. I think Bournemouth have generally good fixtures across this stretch. Liverpool is not ideal. Everton away is not ideal, but overall, Wolves away, West Ham away, Sunderland home, not bad. Palace as well, and I've got Lacroix. I'm thinking about bringing Sarr in, so Forest away, Brighton away, Burnley home, Wolves home, Manchester United away. That's not bad. Maybe not third best, but I'd be curious to see. Burnley is a non-option, not bringing them in. West Ham's a non-option, not bringing them in. Sunderland, good fixtures, and that's good for Mukiele. I feel totally confident playing him. He's good for defensive contributions, good for attacking returns, good for clean sheets. So I'll be starting him here. We're probably going to bench here, probably bench here, play here, depending on my team. Aston Villa, Newcastle away is not good. Brentford at home, arguably not that great either. Brentford have been great. To put this as like a light green and this is a light red seems kind of strange to me. Leeds at home, Wolves away, good, but yeah, Villa I think is a little bit more mixed. I guess as we get down, it's going to make sense. It's a little bit more mixed. I think those are all the ones I would tend to target. For Arsenal, I think, Chelsea and Tottenham is not great away. Leeds away is not great. Manchester United, maybe Arsenal's fixture is a little bit more challenging than I would have thought. Liverpool, not great. Newcastle home, Manchester City home, but again, they've not been playing well at home. Then Sunderland away is very difficult. Forest away, they've only got one fixture that's like pretty good, and that's West Ham at home in Gameweek 28. So I'm going to be holding off on Liverpool assets. I'm totally fine with that. Manchester United, this is a team I'm surprised is not further up. Is this one fixture bringing them down? Like, I think clearly they should be maybe second or third. Fulham at home's great. Tottenham at home's great. West Ham, great. Everton, fine. Crystal Palace at home is pretty good. This is the only one that's challenging. So let's take a look at my stats, see where the rankings are. Just keep this visual in mind, because I'm probably not going to flash between them, and we'll see how my stats stack up against the silly old Fantasy Football Hub. You know, we actually have the technology. Just ignore this little toolbar. I know this is not very professional. I'm bad at YouTube, okay? Let's get over that point. Spoiler alert on the thumbnail of this episode. But yeah, we have the technology side by side. These are the stats that I produce and have up on Airtable. They are live currently right now, all the way through Gameweek 22. And this is my fixture difficulty ranking, and I'm kind of curious to see how that stacks up against this one. So obviously Chelsea, the same. My stats have Crystal Palace above Bournemouth, so those are just flipped. Sunderland above West Ham, Burnley above West Ham as well. It's true for that as well. It's just Sunderland leapfrogging. Then the Manchester club, so Manchester United, then City. So these are all dropped. So as you can see, yeah, I think very similar, but I'm always going to back the stats that I produce. Mine's based on expected goal difference. It's not perfect. Fantasy Football Hub, whatever, is not perfect either. But it's kind of interesting to see both. So let's expand this. Let's take a look at the stats. Okay, so this is just the CSV Excel, although, you know, it's only Office. Another shout out to Only Office. It's a free open source alternative to Word, like, you know, basically the Microsoft Office package. But yeah, so this is going to be exactly what's available on the Airtable as well. That link's in the description if I haven't already shouted that out. And just to run through, I've got all the players up. I've got matches played filtered by, I think, greater than 10, just so we can eliminate some of the outliers that have only played a couple matches. And then I also have it sorted by projected X points. So that's projected points based on the underlying data across the next 5 fixtures. The players highlighted in green are players that I already currently own. The players highlighted in purple are players that I would potentially bring in this week moving forward. So I think we have some good options here. And this is giving me some other ideas because, you know, there's a chance I can just go from Lacroix to Chalobah and just play him over Grealish. Then we can really put off the Bruno Fernandes and, you know, Saka and Cunha and Grealish stuff. I can put that off one more week. It's just another thought, so I'm kind of spitballing. But if we kind of go position by position, maybe that's easier just to break down, you know, the different options. This is an overall view. I like to look at overall and kind of highlight my players to see where the biggest gaps are, because we can see we got to scroll down quite a bit for the projected points. Pickford with higher projected point total across the next 5 compared to Cunha and Grealish. So yeah, the stats are telling a story that is very aligned with my thinking, that the 2 highest priority players that need to get out are Jack Grealish and Matheus Cunha. And the players to potentially bring them in would be Bruno Fernandes and Declan Rice, but I can't afford that, I don't think. So if I can't afford Rice, I can afford Ismail Assar, who's a bit higher, but he is just coming back from AFCON. There's a little bit more competition now that Brennan Johnson's in the squad. So all considerations I need to consider. And let's take a look at my defenders, because generally speaking, I'm pretty happy with my defensive line. We've got Mukiele, who is, all of the defenders are like very high value added per million players. As a mark of record, or that's not a phrase, just as like a benchmark, I guess is what I was trying to say. 0.4 and above is generally really good. It is sample dependent because, like this year, for example, they completely fucked the pricing. So there are a lot of players that are above 0.4. Let's say above 0.5, maybe move the threshold a full 10th there. above 0.5 is going to be pretty good value added per million benchmark. And all of my players are well and above 0.5. So Gabriel, 0.83 by the underlying data, 0.88 by the observed. He is the best value defender, probably the best value player in the entire game, which is why everyone should have him. Mukiele, Gehi, Tarkovsky, Lacroix, very happy with that set of 5. Chalaba's interesting because he's got really good fixtures, arguably this week defensively, but definitely the following 4. So the question is, would I move somebody like Gehi on to Chalaba? I wouldn't want to do that this week when they play Wolves. So then the question would be, do I want to move Lacroix? He's got pretty good fixtures. If we go back to that, which I don't really feel like doing, but the Crystal Palace fixtures were like rated up there. They were like second best, I think, for my stats, and they were like maybe third or fourth best for Fantasy Football Hub. So despite Crystal Palace kind of stumbling, I think I just want to hold on to Lacroix. And I don't know how popular that's going to be, but I think that's probably my stance. I don't want to rock the boat. There's so many bigger fires to put out. I think that ultimately means that it just makes sense to just wait on this one. And that means probably missing out on Chalaba, despite the fact that his fixtures are really, really, really ridiculously good looking across the next 4 or 5. So that means let's move on to the midfield, because we definitely know there's opportunity there with 2 of my lowest projected point total players being Cunha and Grealish. And there's a lot of cheaper alternatives that I would gladly bring in. So Bruno, I think, is an obvious one. It feels so sideways to go from Cunha to Bruno, but Cunha has not even started. I didn't even realize he hasn't been starting the past couple matches. I don't know if that's a fitness thing or trying to get Mbeumo back in. They should be able to play together, but Dorgu, I guess, is favored as a winger. Strange. But all of that aside, it feels like a sideways move because we're going from Manchester United attacker to another Manchester United attacker, especially in a week where they're playing Arsenal away. So it's not even like hot for attacking returns, but it's just a move I want to do long term. Bruno's going to be going up in price. Cunha is going to be falling in price. It probably just makes sense to move Cunha to Bruno Fernandes because I can't go from Grealish to Bruno. So it just kind of puts me in a pickle. So because this is a YouTube/podcast thing, I've got to somehow communicate my point. And the point is basically I'm confused and I don't know exactly what to do. And I think ultimately the best decision is to wait, which kind of sucks because I have an injured player. But the options, let's lay them out. In my position, and if you're in a similar position, hopefully this is helpful. In my position, I've got Grealish who's hurt. I've got Cunha who I don't want. Those are the 2 players I want to sell, but selling Grealish doesn't get me anything this week. I could sell him to Declan Rice. I could sell him to Ismail Assar, but that's basically it. I've got 0.79 million, I think. Let me verify that on my app, on my phone, because I don't know if the FPL.team was actually accurate with my team value. Unfortunately, it was correct. Okay, so 7.9. Who does that mean I can get? Semenyo? But I can't because I have 3 Man City assets. Thank you for signing Gehi, jerks. I could get Neto. I could go for Rice. Tavernier's hurt. I can't get Salah. Casemiro. No, there's basically no one below this line that I would actually go for. Really, it's between Rice and Sarr. Potentially Neto if I'm crazy. Potentially. No, that's it. So I think that basically means I either move Grealish or I just move Cunha. So option 1, just selling Grealish. Option 2, just selling Cunha and benching Grealish. So I would sell Cunha to Bruno Fernandes, or I can get any host of this, but like then the options are truly open. I wouldn't be going for Salah, despite, but selling Cunha would allow me to go from Cunha to Bruno, which is the move I'm planning on making anyways. Just would have been better if it was next week. And then option 3 would be selling both of them. So that would mean I have 2 free transfers and I could sell Grealish and Cunha and get Bruno and Sar, but that doesn't help me with anything. So I think, gun to my head, I'm leaning option B. So let's take a look at how that would look. So this would be the team. I don't love it. I don't hate it. I think it's like generally fine, but that would mean next week I would necessarily have to sell Grealish. I would have 2 transfers again then, but would I deal with Saka? There's just not enough good players at the moment. Pricing is all ruined, which means we basically don't have options. Everyone just has the same players. I'm not even getting into that at this moment. I'm so over FPL in that respect, but I don't know what to do. Help me out, guys. Drop a comment on YouTube. I'm not trying to bump the algorithm. I'm just generally confused on what I should do. Like, is there something obvious I'm missing? Should I go Obi to Junior Krupi to Mane? I think it's a terrible week for both of those players, but I mean, it would give me an extra player to play over like Bruno. Would I play Junior Krupi over Bruno Fernandes? No. So I think logic would state Cunha to Bruno, deal with the other issues next week. Next week is going to be a much better week to figure out these kinds of problems. And hopefully Grealish doesn't go down in price too much. He's flagged. I don't know if that helps, but this is what I'm leaning toward. If you want to get my final updated team ahead of the deadline, I will be posting it on the Discord. So that link is in the description as well if you want to follow along. And let's move on to the Scout/FPL Scout competition team. I'm bad at this. Okay, moving on to the free hit/Scout team competition. I'm so bad at introducing this segment. I need to come up with a better name for it. I think that's the problem. But essentially what I'm trying to do is I am setting up a free hit team that if you are free hitting, this might be a good template, for a lack of a better term, to kind of base your team off of. This is what we see on the screen right now. If you're watching YouTube, this is what the algorithm chose. So, just to give a little bit of background on that, I run all of my data and then I look at the predicted or expected projected points across the next one fixture. And this is the team that it produced. It said the 5-3-2 was the best formation for this week based on the players that are put in by the algorithm compared to 4-4-2, 3-5. All of the formations are in there. And the 5-3-2 was the best formation for projected points. And this was the exact team that it produced. I'm probably going to have some differing feelings on it. So I will edit it to give my final free hit scout team to go up against the official FPL scout team. But I just wanted to use this as kind of a template, but also it's very interesting to see what the algorithm is projecting. And it's highly based on the fixture difficulty rating. Obviously, we've got 2 Tottenham players, which would normally not be in the team because they play Burnley. We've got 3 Man City players against Wolves. We've got 3 Sunderland defenders against West Ham, projecting West Ham not to be a good attacking team, which I think is probably fair. We also have 2 Brentford players against Nottingham Forest, and obviously they're playing at home. So just to run through the team that the algorithm came up with, we've got Roofs, Mukiele, Dan Ballard, Christian Romero, Van de Ven, Tarkovsky, Semenyo, Foden, Shada, Holland captain, and Igor Thiago. And if you've noticed anything within this transition, I have altered the team, not by much, but this is the free hit scout team I'm going to go with because I actually largely agree with what the algorithm came out with. But should I have 2 Tottenham defenders in there? I just feel like there's a chance that one or both of them could get a goal off of a corner. So this is the team I'm going to go with. So the only change that I've made is instead of Roofs, I've gone for Pickford. So I've got 2 Everton defenders, 2 Sunderland defenders. And I think that's fair. Looking at the the predicted results that I went through for this week, I think that's fair. Obviously, I have a 0-0 for Sunderland West Ham. I've got a clean sheet for Everton, so defensively looking pretty good. Not great for the Burnley Tottenham since I predicted a 1-1, but I think Tottenham could easily get a clean sheet there as well. Burnley are not great. This is not news. So what I'll do is I will crop this, throw it on the Discord for transparency, and then I'm curious what the official FPL Scout team puts out. I'm curious about what they do every single week because they are very much not data-led, not evidence-based decision-making, but they've been killing me lately on this little competition I have. So I clearly know nothing, despite the fact that my team's done pretty well, my actual FPL team, not so much my free hit team, but I think on paper, which is not where the game is played, I think that looks pretty good. We've got very good defenders. We've got very good attackers overall, maybe not in the best of form, but I don't know how much I believe in form in terms of, I believe in it, obviously it is a thing, but it can turn around instantly. So I wouldn't be surprised if Foden finally got some sort of attacking return after blanking for 7 weeks or whatever. And same with Haaland. He's been blanking a lot, but it would not surprise me at all if he scored 3 this one. So I'm going to be captaining Haaland. I'll be captaining him on the free hit scout team thing. And is there anything else I need to talk about this episode? I'm going to take a pause and let's return. Before I knew it, the recording was over and I'm a little fearful of how long this episode is going to be. So I think we're just going to wrap it here. Like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. You know what to do. I don't need to tell you. But good luck this coming week. And I still hope that I do better than you, but I think I've done well enough over the past week or so. So I'll let you have this one. You could do well this one. I'm going to hopefully do better the following one. Honestly, I cannot predict how I'm going to do this week. Generally, I have a good idea of how I think I'm going to do or how it looks on paper. This week is a complete shot in the dark. Last week, I thought I was going to do poorly. I got a good green arrow. The week before, I thought I was going to do well. I got a bad red arrow. What happens when I don't know exactly how I'm going to do? So I'm not entirely sure. Somebody help me out with my team. Is it Cunha to Bruno? Is that just the obvious pick? It's such a dumb sideways move, but there's no good alternatives. I have the players I want. Defense looks good. Midfield needs work. Forward line is fine. I'm not touching that. Goalkeeper's fine. So it literally has to be midfield, but there's not good options this week. And I already have Enzo Fernandez. Okay, I've rambled enough. This is going to be a stupid long episode, so feel free to use the chapter markers, as I say, in the absolute outro of the episode. So I'll see you next week, and good luck, and I'll be back to wrap up how Gameweek 23 went later.